Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Today we're diving into a conversation with Schessa Garbutt, a creative director who's built a thriving design agency. But here's the thing, she's doing it almost entirely through organic inbound, no paid ads, no traditional lead generation, and her real superpower is writing, thought leadership, and a design philosophy that asks, what if we use design for a change instead of just extraction? Sheza, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So let's start off easy. Can you tell me a bit about your background and what really led you into a journey of starting your own agency?
I was born and raised in LA. That's where I live and work now. And I went to school, I went to undergrad for graphic design. That was sort of my focus between design and drawing, actually. And I remember thinking at the time, like, oh, design is how I can use my creativity in a business way, in a business sense. And after graduating, I went into startup land for a little bit. I was a head of design at a startup for social media planning. And while I was there, I realized, yes, design is important and powerful, but this is not necessarily the place where I want to do it. So I moved on to sort of a medium-sized design studio out here in Santa Monica. And there I kind of got my chops with branding and packaging design and website design as well. And I found that my favorite projects that I was working on there were not necessarily the big brand names, Warner Brothers, Target, things like that. It was more so the arts and culture organization, the the clients that were requiring, I think, a little bit more thought and care, nonprofit organizations, yeah, cultural spaces, pieces like that, even hyperlocal orgs that were just based here in Southern California. So I left that job in 2020, actually, the beginning of March 2020.
Wow, COVID.
Yes, exactly, which was California had our lockdown. I think it started on March 8th, and I had put in my 2 weeks on March 1st. So
Wow.
1 week
No
into my
way.
2 week notice, yes. 1 week into my 2 week notice, my boss at the time was like, "Are you sure you wanna leave? Like,
Mm.
this is changing everything, right? Every work looks different for everyone, especially office workers, so suddenly." And we were working from home, and I said, "You know what? Yeah, I do still wanna." And
You
I
you
ended
took the hard route. You really did.
did. I did end up staying instead of just having a 2 weeks notice, I ended up staying on for another month, but at the end of that, I was very ready to go.
Mhm.
It's funny thinking back on that time today because 'cause I'm like, "Wow, that's really gutsy to have so many unknowns in the broader world and in my personal life and to still choose this conviction of I think that design is such a superpower and it should be used not just by these extractive kind of mega corporations and billionaires. I think that everyday people deserve access to good design." So uh, that was sort of the impetus for starting my studio, Firebrand. Her full Christian name is Firebrand Creative House, but it just goes by Firebrand these days. Yeah, and really focusing in on working with other artists and activists and grassroots organizations, but also national nonprofits and yeah, sort of these larger names in the arts and cultural and impact spaces over the years. That's kind of been my journey so far. And now I am at this May will be 6 years of working independently.
Congratulations. Oh.
Thank you.
Just past the 6 years mark. Now you need to reach the 10-year mark so you can say, I've worked a dozen years in my agency. That
Yes,
would be quite an
exactly.
achievement. When you're starting your own thing, you have all these limiting beliefs, and you need to sort of build up that confidence you have in delivering for clients because everything just relies on you and the income coming in. End of the day, you got to pay your bills. Tell me about those early moments you started running your agents. Did you have a bit of a runaway, or did you start from scratch and you had a bit of savings that you were relying on?
Sure, yeah. So I started from my personal savings. I
Hmm.
had the year prior in 2019, I had finished paying off my student loans, which was like my
Wow.
largest debt that I thankfully that I've ever had in my life, and
Hmm.
and to not have that hanging over my head because I do think, yeah, that realistically that is a large reason why a lot of people in my generation, millennials, don't start their own businesses, don't own their own homes, and don't make these larger investments is because they're like constantly throwing money into the void that is student loan debt. So I feel very grateful to have paid that off. That was through working my day job, but then also moonlighting, freelancing with other clients. So when I started Firebrand, I was debt free, which is amazing. But also I was starting with, I already had freelance clients that I was working with, and those people continued. One of them was a all-girls school, for example. Some of them were sort of smaller projects, consumer products, that friends and family were starting. So those were the initial clients that sort of kept me going through the
Mhm.
summer of 2020. And then I was really lucky to I was part of it was guts and audacity, and then part of it was luck.
Mm.
I remember I had written an article called Black Lives Matter is not a design challenge. I published it in the early part of the summer. And somebody from San Francisco Design Week contacted me and they were like, "Oh, we love this article. Can we repost it on our blog or can we put it in our emails?" And I said, "You could do that, but you could also just invite me to speak at the conference."
That takes a lot of guts. Did you have a lot of this confidence build up behind you, like these speaker events? For example, me, I'm building my confidence up, getting on podcasts, getting to know people, networking. But like speaker events and speaking in front of people, I want to be able to do that. But at the moment, I don't know if I can do it.
Yeah. So my thought was I didn't want to be tokenized as like, oh, and here's a link to this article that is deeply relevant to everything
Wow.
going on in the States and in the broader world truly at that moment. And just sort of lip service of like, oh yes, we've like included this as a link somewhere that will get lost.
Mhm.
That year the conference was completely online. So I think to answer your question around building confidence, I mean, I had presented to a lot of clients. I had been on executive boards and in sort of minor leadership positions up till that point, so I was comfortable with public speaking, but
Mhm.
I think had it been live, I probably would have had more jitters versus, like, I was literally sitting
Ew.
in my living room. It was
Yeah, no,
just
no, that's
me.
fine, but you're still
Yeah.
presenting end of the day, but you know what, like, that's I'm reading this book now as well about positive mindset and to actually Think and Grow Rich, and
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of it is you building yourself to be able to handle that speaker events in your mind, in your imagination before it
Yeah.
actually happens, because when the opportunity comes to you and you're not mentally prepared, you would just reject it.
Yes.
You wouldn't take the opportunity, and you did.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. It's so much of it is preparing ourselves for these moments where it's like, okay, it's not that I don't know what I'm talking about. It's not that
Yeah.
I don't know what I want to say or I don't have the work to back up the things that I want to say. It really is all mental hurdles. That talk was very well received. It was the most replayed talk. They had recorded all of the talks. It was the most replayed talk from the conference that year. Yeah, and I'm really glad that I sort of went out on a limb and decided to do that, and that also showed me one, that talk ended up being lead generation for some other things, and, um, other designers would because of that talk, would recommend me to potential clients, or they would say,
Mhm.
"Oh, join our team for be the creative director on our team for this specific project, or come speak at our firm about sort of these topics or something related to these topics." So it was lead generation in that sense.
Mm.
But it also something that I'm realizing more and more, not just from the standpoint of public speaking, lead generation, is as technology changes, as the design industry shifts, it's less having the hand skills is important, and we can talk more about that later, but more so how you approach the design, like what your design thinking is, what your design philosophy is, that's what's going to be valuable to people who are choosing to to continue to work with humans, in designing their
Yeah.
products or their websites or their branding, um, is like how am I caring for their story?
Mhm.
By understanding the values and the future vision of any particular client or organization that I'm working with, and what is my approach? What is the thinking behind the approach that I'm going to bring. So doing the public speaking and the writing, and even fiction writing, those are all ways of expressing this is the lens that I bring to the world.
Mhm.
So the sort of intersecting philosophies that I bring to the world and that I would bring to, yeah, a client's project or design thinking.
So you believe doing this and what you just covered here is one way that you can really stand out in this technology space that's happening now because you're bringing your own persona, your personality. Like you said, your filter of how you see the world and what sort of design you would bring to this potential client.
Yes, exactly.
Interesting perspective there. I like that you covered it because there's so much fear in this technology space of am I going to be replaced by this
Yes.
technology? And obviously, you're already thinking ahead of that. We might cover some more in depth thinking behind that if you don't mind.
The boogeyman that's on everyone's mind is AI, artificial intelligence, and how is that changing our jobs, especially as designers, as people who work on the computer. Folks in entry-level jobs are finding that it's harder to get work. New grads are finding that it's harder to find work. But also I read recently that women in sort of middle management positions are finding it harder to get work or sustain work, which is interesting as well. But I think and I don't say that to scare anyone. The point that I actually want to make is it's going to be really important and critical to think about what AI can't do. Even though it's been sort of chalked up to like AI can do anything, like AI is going to like replace all the jobs. But the things that AI can't do are things with really high variability and tactility. One of those things is farm work, for example, so become a beekeeper.
Yes.
But some of the other things that it can't do well are critical thinking. It can't sort of imagine futures outside of formats and models and patterns that it's studying or coalescing from the broader internet or from sort of pre-existing dominant narratives about what the world is like or what the world is going to be like. I think what we have to remember is that some of the largest and most popular AI models are literally created by paternalistic, patriarchal, capitalist people. And so the way that they think and go about moving through the world is built on that model. But those models are not necessarily working anymore, or they are sort of on their final legs and their last gasping breaths. At least that's how I feel looking at the chaos of what what the United States government has become.
Oh my gosh.
Unfortunately.
We could have
And
a
the havoc,
whole
yeah.
season of podcasts about that.
And yeah, that could be a whole other episode, and the havoc that it's wreaked on the world. But what that means is that highly soft skills like relationality and critical thinking and compassion and actually being able to empathize and build relationships and think about things beyond sort of the patterns and models that we've been given,
Mhm.
those are going to be the key critical skills, not just for workers, but I think also for students and young people who are learning within this new context of AI where it's like you don't have to really know how to do math, you don't really have to know how to code, but you have to know how to sort of be in partnership with these technologies and understand like what humans uniquely bring to the table if it's no longer
Mhm.
like this greater computational power.
Yeah, I love the way you described it so intelligently as well. But yes, with emotion, that's one way in critical thinking you're going to be able to stand out. Like you say, they sort of are framed within these models like a structure of what they follow. Will they ever be able to grasp emotion? Will they sort of class it under like structure? This is what emotion is, but it won't ever sort of be genuine. Of course, it's only a machine.
Right, yeah, I was trying to explain this to a I was talking to somebody at, like, it was the sound art exhibition, and he was talking about using AI to aid him in writing his dissertation, I believe, and this was sometime last year, so I think more research has come out since then around the idea of using AI as a therapist, but he was like, "Yeah, using AI as a therapist is great, like, it's so much more accessible, and you could talk to them any time of day," which I'm like, "I don't know that that's teaching us good things about boundaries and communication."
Mhm.
But what I said to him was, "Yeah, but artificial intelligence can't literally empathize, like, it can say the right thing to you when if you're going through a breakup or whatever it may be, but it has never itself gone through a breakup, so it can't empathize with you."
Yes. Yeah.
And he looked so confused, and I was like, "Maybe this is, like, male loneliness epidemic type stuff."
Yeah, yeah, I know what you
He looked
mean. We
so
women tend to
bewildered.
empathize more. Yeah,
Yes.
that makes sense.
Like, why is that necessary? Why would that be of value? That uh and of course now we're seeing, AI has a lot of bias toward agreeing with people even when they're wrong and sort of at times bolstering, toxic opinions or toxic worldviews and mindsets in people. And that's not necessarily ideally, a human therapist will not do that, right? They are there to offer you a different
Yeah.
perspective.
Ooh, I like that, yeah.
Yeah.
I can give you an example, sort of
Yeah.
supporting the idea of a therapist a little bit. But he was going through a little bit of a crisis moment traveling. After COVID, he picked something up where he's stressed whilst he's traveling. And literally, he can't talk to me. He can't talk to anyone. He was on his phone with ChatGPT, and ChatGPT actually calmed him down and taught him some breathing exercise. So, in some situations, that accessibility was really helpful. But I agree at the same time, sometimes we need to be told what we're thinking or the way that we led to that thought is wrong and show us the right way, which AI is not going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. It tends toward agreeing because that's what gets what gets most people to use the tech more. They're like, "Oh, I feel smart
Yeah.
and I feel smart and right when I use this." Yeah. Meanwhile, it is making critical thinking skills and cognitive abilities sort of be on the decline. What I'm seeing in a lot of students use AI, I think there's a necessary intellectual struggle that has to take place. I mean, this is literally necessary for like social emotional development, but also for like brain synapses to connect and like new ideas to be formed and
Mm.
remembered in the mind. Artificial intelligence robs us of the necessary cognitive work that takes. I think offloading some of it isn't a bad thing, but yeah, what does it mean when people are like no longer have to feel like they have to struggle to figure things out or to convey their ideas because a machine will do it for them?
You know what's interesting though? It's like all the thoughts I've been thinking or seeing on the news, like diving into those topics, you're just naturally leading your way to them. What something that everyone should be considering at the same time. I mean, I keep seeing all these videos where, for example, people are not even communicating with one another because one person uses ChatGPT, the other person uses ChatGPT, and sort of the AI is talking to the people rather than the actual people standing up and taking some action. Same thing with critical thinking. We need to put ourselves in this mindset that we are struggling to figure out a problem rather than getting the answer thrown at us.
Yeah, yeah, I think there are many problems in the world right now that require humans to really struggle with them. And maybe AI is an aid in terms of research or bringing data together so that we can then look at that with a critical eye. But asking AI for the answer itself is not. I don't think is going to lead to the creative solutions that we need for the way that the world is changing so rapidly.
So, just to follow up from that, how would you recommend to people listening use AI carefully and have that balance?
So the ways that I've used it have been pretty sparse, and I am always interested. My friends will tell me different ways that they've used AI, and I'm always trying to listen with a compassionate ear because I'm like, this is how it's changing the world, right? Instead of me like judging or cutting them off, it's like let me understand how this tool is used by you. But for me, it's been pretty sparse. Part of that is the ecological impact of AI. I'm like, let me use this for things that are worthwhile, and that might be a different definition for everyone. But I typically will use it for research questions. For example, the other day I was writing a fictional short story and I wanted to name a piece of technology. The story was taking place in northern Africa, and so I was asking AI what are some indigenous North African words for cheetah, and it gave me a list of different words and where their origins and also citations for where it was getting the information. Another example is I was recently taking a grant writing class and working with my grant writing coach. He was like, "Oh, you need to find a citation for like statistics around environmental racism because that's what the project was related to." And so he typed into chat like, "Find me science articles that are related to environmental racism or related to inequitable access to green spaces," and it pulled up different articles and like links and citations. And we were able to go rather than having to search through the internet or multiple pages of Google or JSTOR or whatever it may be, we were able to go through this shorter list and find a statistic and a citation that I could use in this grant application that I was doing. So that is how I have used AI. And I know that's maybe like a very simple way of using it. I've also seen people use it. A friend was using it to make like a website landing page the other day. Maybe they gave it a PowerPoint or they put in all the data points from PowerPoint and it spat out this landing page that looked pretty decent. It had some accessibility issues, but it looked pretty good from the outset. I was like, "Oh, it has contrast issues," but we you didn't ask for it, so you didn't
But
ask
you
it
don't
to
know
do
what's
that,
on the
right?
back end, do you? That's the trouble with all these lovable websites that they create in seconds. But what I loved with what you explained is you're saying, yeah, I use AI and it probably saves you a lot of time. But can you imagine like back in the day, what is it? Before like computers and that, you would have to go to the library and it would
Yeah.
take you days to figure
Yes.
out this, make sure you're using correct facts or
Yes.
wording, like you just said. So
Yeah.
it's great to have a technology at our disposal, but we have to be mindful that we're using it, carefully and with sort of restrictions and not really putting our mind somewhere where we're not even utilizing it. And then we just become dumber and dumber.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I which the world can't afford right now for humans to sort of check out and stop engaging with each other and with, like, the facts of life and of current existence. Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned going to the library. One of my other projects, I've been researching Octavia Butler, who's a Black sci-fi writer, and her 400 boxes of her archives and papers are at the Huntington Library that's near here in Southern California. So once a week for the past month or so, I've been going there, and it's like I take the train up there, which is its own sort of like slowness, and then I go into the archive and I'm reading through physical papers because she was doing a lot of her work, the work that I was researching at the turn of this last century, so like early 2000s. First, like early word processing and things like that. And so it's such a I feel we live in such an interesting time where it's like you can do this really slow physical research and then at the same time, and then be able to open my laptop and use AI to do really fast research. And existing between those two kind of temporalities is cool. Like I don't know, I sort of celebrate that. And I love that. I think what I love about the archive and what it reminds me of is like all human knowledge and all available documentation is not on the internet. Like, these things
Ooh. Yeah, of course.
and we forget that, right? Because it's like Google or AI will find us a answer. It may not be the best answer, but it will find a source to cite, right? But I love the specificity of, yeah, that research work that I'm doing and that it requires a slowness and more contemplative nature.
I was going to say, it probably must feel quite nostalgic going through these archives and, touching the physical
Ex
papers and seeing it, smelling it, being there rather than just typing it up on your computer. It's a whole experience.
Exactly. It's a very much a ritual for me, and the last time I went up to the library. I'm such a nerd. I went up to the librarian's desk, and she's handing me the box of papers that I've been going through, and I had this big smile on my face, and I
Mm.
was like, "Okay, I'm gonna sit down at the desk, and I'm gonna take a couple deep breaths, and then I'm just gonna dive into this for 2 hours." And actually, that last session, I didn't bring my laptop in. The first couple, I had brought my laptop. But, I took paper notes, on the things that I was reading through, and I didn't bring my laptop, and I was like, "Wow, how often in modern life do we even get to do this?" Right? Where there's, like, 5 screens in front of me, or,
Wow,
there's
yeah.
there's music and whatever, so many people walking by, like, all the other researchers there. It's a very quiet room, the reading room for the special collections, and I was like, "This is actually this is like a nice brain meditation." Like, it's a nice break
Yes,
from
yeah.
the rest of life that's so noisy and fast-paced.
I had a podcast with somebody recently, and a similar thing. They're very creative in what they do at work and in hobby wise. But there's so many hobbies they have that are creative, but they do them because it fills up their cup. And then you come back to the business, and because sometimes, I don't know about your perspective, but when you have to work to design, sometimes it loses the joy because you're limited to what you have to do for a client. But if you have your hobbies where you can also be creative, you're not limited. It's just you and a paper or drawing or whatever other forms of creativity.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really necessary. I think and I tell my students this all the time, it's important to determine what in your practice is not for sale, and why that is.
Mhm.
Took up as I said earlier, I took up graphic design because that was a way to use my creativity and my art and drawing skills and my arts degree, to earn a living. Yeah, figuring out things that I'm like, I'm not going to turn this into a professional endeavor. I'm not ever going to sell this at a craft fair. I don't have to learn this instrument to become a number one pop star. I can actually just do these things because I enjoy them. And maybe nobody even knows that I have this hobby, right? I don't even necessarily have to share about it on social media if I don't want to. Hey, yeah, having those things is really, yeah, really important and sacred. I think allowing ourselves to be bad at things or to be beginners at things, especially in the hobby space, is necessary for for our spirits.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a few topics I want to dive into, especially around writing. From the marketing agency owners I've spoken with and creative leaders, a lot of them have either written a book or they're thinking about writing a book. So I wonder if there's steps that actually they should be taken when they do want to endeavor that writing. What exactly does it consist of?
Yeah, so I have published one book. It's Firebrand's first book. Actually, it's a anthology and there's a lot of fiction in it. So not too much nonfiction. I can sort of speak to that process, but it's not really the same as writing like a design strategy book.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Did I use my sort of design point of view and philosophy in creating the book and bringing together the all of the different contributors and how I designed it and how I thought about the book and conceptualized it? Yes, definitely. But I'm not laying out sort of step by step in the book
Mm.
how I did that or how I went about it. The book itself is sort of an embodiment of those philosophies, if that makes sense.
Sorry, I know nothing about writing books clearly, but how do you have a draft and then you need to connect with somebody who can publicize the book, or what is the whole process? I'm more wondering about that.
Yeah, sure. So for self-publishing for this process, I had put out an open call on social media and I said, here are the themes and things that I'm interested in including in the book. The title of the book is Time and Its Travelers. So everything was around people of color and queer people, their relationships to time and temporality. I got really interested in that in the during the pandemic when it felt like time had dilated, like the time felt like sort of stretched out, especially in those early
Yeah.
days where we were all at home and like the world was very quiet.
Yeah, people
And
didn't
every
know what
and
to do with themselves. Yeah.
yeah, everyone was baking bread. Yeah, but there was this mass experience of this kind of different pace of life that everybody was having all at once. And that got me really interested in putting together this anthology, this collection of different people's stories and artwork around, okay, well, how do you relate to time? Or how does your culture or your ancestry relate to time? What do you think the future will be like? Things like that. So those are all the topics. That was an open call on social media. And then I went through and read. This is all a very self-led process. I went through and read all of the submissions and made the selections for the book. And then I remember literally at one point as I was beginning to design the book, figuring out the order, I had each submission written on a sticky note and I was rearranging them on my window to figure out what the best flow would be for sort of the stories and the artwork and what things sort of naturally paired well together, visuals wise, thematically, and then putting those all into a book and working with a local printer here in Pasadena called Typecraft, getting quotes from them about, okay, this is what I want the book, these are the dimensions I want, and wanting, yeah, this is what I was referencing, is wanting to have this sort of window in the front.
Ooh, that's a lovely design.
Thank you. This is my illustration work. Yeah, and having all these fun kind of, the table of content was a
Ooh.
timeline instead of
Yeah.
just a typical sort of list of things. And so having all of these fun moments. What else can I show you? This illustration is by one artist and the story is by another writer, but they
Mm.
went sort of thematically. And those sort of synchronicities just happen to work for putting things together. But
Mhm.
uh yeah, once I had figured out the flow of everything, it was putting it all into this sort of format, this template that I had set up on InDesign, doing copy editing, which there are still a few typos. I definitely in future would hire a external copy editor and not do it all myself. Yeah, and then working with the printer to make sure that everything looked right, was printing well. I think we went through 2 or 3 proofs before we printed out the final books. I found that the submissions all were coming from a space of like care and inquiry and I think love for the world and the cultures and people that were represented in the stories and in the illustrations that were submitted. But yeah, I treated this book as a sort of art object, and so the first edition was 100 copies, which sold out the end of last year. It was published last year and it sold out within the year. And so I might do another print run. This is also labeled volume 1, which implies that there will be other volumes.
Mm,
I may move on to a
indicating
new
there's going to be
collection.
another one on the way.
Yes, exactly. At some point, I have so many other things I'm working on right now, but yeah, at some point.
That's great that you covered the steps you took. I'm sure there's other ways people can do it as well.
Yes.
And there's all these ghost writers if people are not into writing. And I've had a podcast with one too. But it's good to know the process you went through just in case somebody's thinking about doing it. It's not that complicated as people put their thoughts that it is. What I want to talk more about, Schessa, is your agency, because what I found interesting is that you focus on organic marketing. So I want to ask you, what sort of organic marketing are you focusing on? Is it that thought leadership, those speaker events, getting on podcasts? What exactly does that entail in sort of connecting with your prospects?
Yeah. So it's a little bit of all of those things. Podcast wise, I've had conversations with other studio owners on podcasts. I've also talked with more corporate podcasts like Adobe Wireframe. I have a episode there. And then speaking engagements and things that are sort of either directly design related, whether that's at like the AIGA conference or SF Design Week that I mentioned, speaking to specific agencies. There was a time where I was a teaching artist for Meta in the early pandemic, or speaking at IDEO, which also happened, gosh, when was that? Probably 2022. And then also talking at lots of guest lectures at sort of universities and colleges and things like that. But sometimes people will come to me, they'll email me and they'll say, "Oh, I heard you speak at such and such place or this conference, and we're looking for a designer that focuses on the themes that you focus on. Here's an RFP, or we want to invite you to work with us on this project." So that's sort of how that has worked out. In terms of the more blogging side of things, I do have a Substack which I don't post on regularly. It's definitely, yeah, it could be much more regular. But that has been a space where I'm finding that there are overlapping themes around environmental justice and being anti-war and having these like ideas and philosophies around community building and people power. Those are the threads and topics that have naturally arisen. And I think the nice part about that blog and not being overly, what's the word I'm looking for? Strict maybe about it, is I've gotten to see what has naturally emerged in terms of my topics and interests over the last couple of years. And some of that writing I actually have submitted as work samples in RFPs and things like that, or I've been able to copy paste from those thoughts.
It's nice that they is connected with what you're doing. It's like a spider web, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I'm weaving this spider web and I'm like, oh, okay, and this is connecting to this and that. Oh, I guess this is an area that I maybe have more interest in that I wouldn't have described myself as or wouldn't have described my practice focusing on, but what does it look like to focus on like this particular intersection of these themes?
Marketing agencies say you do need to focus on that thought leadership and you naturally putting yourself on top of mind to your prospects. But is there an actual hard set number or an ROI that you can pinpoint from this sort of a thought leadership?
No, I do not sort of track things in these hard number ways. And it would be really interesting, I think, if I did. I would be curious, even just knowing how many speaking engagements did I do in the last year. Between everything, probably a dozen. I'm speaking in so many different spaces, and sometimes it's an art workshop, sometimes it's a conference, sometimes it's a classroom. It's still me, but it's bringing out different sides of my story and it's reaching different audiences. Like I have had people say, "Oh, I heard you speak at my class, 4 years ago, and now I'm working at this agency, and
Wow.
we're looking for such and such designer, or can you come speak here?" So it's not a. I mean, it's of course it's active in that I'm preparing for the talks and I'm going and I'm speaking and being in person and um, networking with people before and after I speak. But there's also an element of that's out of my control where it's like, yeah, and then this person has to like take this nugget, find this memorable nugget and take that into their practice or into their workplace. maybe they're referencing or hyperlinking whatever I had shared, the recording of that, referencing that somewhere else, and somebody else sees it. So it's very truly organic in that sense.
Yeah, for sure. It's building on top of each other, isn't it? Because like now, in the day and age we are, and actually you said this as well, we're constantly getting bombarded from all sides. So now the amount of touch points a potential client needs to have with you to build that trust before they ever get on a conversation with you have become so much more than it was back in the day. So it's like, I guess one thing that it does, it's like a touch point. Oh, they see you on this speaker event. Oh, you was in their classroom. Oh, you was there. So you sort of keep it on top of mind, which clearly is very important. I would love to know if there is an ROI, if somebody is tracking it, because, I just love to see a clear number on, like what's like how many potential clients reached out to me after this event and after that event. So it's just my natural curiosity getting the better of me.
Yes. No, I appreciate that. You're making me want to sort of track it more consciously, more intentionally.
Yeah. Yeah. My last question was sort of running out of time here is what is your goal for the agency and maybe on the side of your projects as well in the next couple of years? Have you set any milestones for yourself and the agency?
Yeah, so returning to actually my original wish with the agency, which was to work remotely and travel more often in my work. And I know that's more of a quality of life piece than like a specific business ROI, KPI, whatever it may be. But yeah, I in 2020, I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna start my own business. I'll be able to move around and go travel anywhere in the world." And then it was like, "Actually, no, that's that would be very irresponsible to do that during the pandemic."
Mhm.
Now, 6 years in, having built up a client base, and having worked remotely, um, but also being interested very much so in this ecological, environmental side of things and wanting to travel and do research for that. That has been that will be sort of the focus of this year and the following year is moving around and doing my work, more broadly in the world and connecting with communities outside of my own. I feel like I've built a very strong local network here in Los Angeles, working with a lot of local organizations. Friends will recommend me for work and things like that. And a strong network online, but wanting to again do the things that our computers can't do, which is just walk around and be embodied in nature and use our sort of like intuitive somatic intelligence to understand the world better, and go about documenting it. I'm working on a
That would be cool. Yeah. Quite a few people, especially women, actually. I spoke to Robin Fisher Roffer, and she created this amazing business for herself, and now all she does on the side, so she travels all the way around the world. Business is running itself pretty much, bringing in revenue and money. And she has a travel blog, that she's very dedicated into writing and keeping on top of. The same thing like you, wanting to document that process and just enjoying life and they connecting with other communities.
yes. Yeah, at the end of the day, I work to live, not live to work.
Yes, yes.
And yes, yes. And I think it is very easy to be, and I know this because I spent the last 5 years this way. It's very easy for work to be the main focus of life and the main focus of my waking hours and even some of my sleeping hours, unfortunately.
Wow, yeah.
But I would not this is getting very existential. I would not want to look back on my life and say like, yeah, and say like, I wish I had traveled more. I wish I had
Yeah.
experienced
No,
such
and it's a very realistic thing. Yeah.
yeah, I feel very few people at the end of their lives say, "Oh, I wish I had worked more. I wish I had worked overtime more."
Yeah.
No one's
Yeah,
saying
no, truly, and you have to learn, like, for example, from your grandmothers, great-grandmothers, if people are lucky enough to know them. Learn from what they still wanted to experience in life. Like you say, they never talked about, "I want to work more." If anything, they wanna experience life, they wanna take more risks, you
yes,
know? That's what life is all about. I think the main area I think everyone's trying or should really aim for is if you have your own business, get it to a point that it brings in revenue, it's sustainable, but not to the point it consumes your life that you can't really take some time off and enjoy it.
yes, exactly. Yeah.
Sheza, thank you so much for spending an hour with me and really truly being realistic and honest about, like some of the topics we talked about. And I feel like we could talk about so much more, especially something I really hold close to my heart is millennials sort of being sucked into the social media and phones and this digital world. So I really do feel sorry about them and sort of in a way, how can I bring that awareness to kids that I know around me to stay away from this digital world? It's like, what can you actually do? So you have a very strong opinion about that. Are you writing any blogs or anything like that about that specific topic?
I am writing a novel about it.
You are-
Yes, a
okay.
novel. So more fiction that contains my design philosophy, but it's a Afrofuturist romance novel.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So yeah, sci-fi romance. It takes place in the future. Uh, yeah, a future where there is even more technology and it's even easier to just live in the digital world. And so, what does that mean for romance and connecting to other people? Yeah, that's a. I wish I could say more about it, but I'll
Yeah.
just leave you with that, and you'll have to read it.
Just keep posted, right? Follow me, and then you might see it come out.
Exactly.
It's just that if people wanted to connect with you, find out more, keep, on top of what you're going to be doing next, where should they find you?
Yeah, so they can find me on Instagram at _Schessa, my first name, or on Substack. It's just substack.com/Schessa or at Schessa, however if you type in my name, I'll pop up. You'll see my face. Yeah.
Amazing. We'll make sure all the links are dropped below so people can locate you easily as well.
Thank you.
And for anyone watching, if you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe and let me know your favorite takeaway from Sheza down below in the comments. Thanks for watching.
Thank you so much.